What can you tell me about World War II? Like just general knowledge.
Well, it was a war that started in 1939, I believe, when Hitler invaded whatever countries, Poland, and basically tried to take all of Europe, and it escalated into a global war.
It was the last World War. There was two fronts, right? One was Japan, the other one was Germany, and then there was like, was it Italy?
I don't know the dates.
Okay.
However, I know that it's the Second World War. D-Day was a big event. That was hold up. Pearl Harbor as well. I know December 7th, 1949, I think is Pearl Harbor. Who was president?
It was a very important war. It happened in the 1930s through the 1940s.
There was this guy named Hitler.
And there was this guy named Mussolini.
Bad guys.
They were kind of friends, but not really.
And everyone hated them.
Everyone hated them, like except
Japan.
Except for Japan, because
Japan loved
Japan
them.
was bad.
Yeah,
But
bad.
from our perspective, because that's how we remember it,
As Americans.
with our World War II memories.
Yes.
Memories of World War II.
When Roosevelt announced on Sunday, December the 8th, or Monday, December the 8th, that we were at war, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant. And then, going to school, they kind of told us what that meant. That Nazi Germany and Japan were now our enemies, and we were going to have to destroy them.
That Germany got too big for its britches and started invading other countries in Europe to take them over.
There was the three-headed beast, so to speak, the Italians, the Russians, and the Germans and the Japanese that were warring against essentially the rest of the Allied groups.
It was Germany, of course, and except over Czechoslovakia, Poland, and what are all those countries up there around Germany? And ended up in France, and then they went to the east and went against the Russians. They got bogged down in Stalingrad, outside of Stalingrad, never got in, right? And so then the Russians, after the winter, the Russians started pushing the Germans out and they massacred the Germans. However, the Germans had massacred the Russians going in, and then it was payback as far as the communists were concerned.
World War II has always been something that I've had throughout my life as far as the memory and history from my grandfather to family members and whatnot. So I guess I was born and raised around World War II.
What do you know about the tension between Japan and the United States during this time period?
I know none.
Well, they were very tense. And then Pearl Harbor happened, and lots of people died, and then America got really angry.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor was a big thing.
I know that prior to the war, like there was already tension between the U.S. and Japan for like, it was like Pacific, control over the Pacific and stuff like that.
Yes.
There were some atomic bombs.
There were some.
Yes.
They
Dropped
happened to happen. In
Just the
Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which are in Japan.
But I know that Japan bombed the United States December 7th, 1941.
Well, building up to the bombing of Pearl Harbor, there was increased tension and distrust on both sides. Particularly, the United States was fearful that they could be attacked or that they were going to be engaged in some way by the Japanese.
I know that we had done an oil embargo with them that really kind of pissed them off, and due to the fact that they weren't getting oil or food or shipment or whatever from America, gave them more reason to hate Americans.
Japan was already attacking China and was trying to take over other territory, and the United States said that if you do this, we're going to shut off your steel, which was very much needed by the Japanese. And so they retaliated by attacking Pearl Harbor.
Do you know anything about the tension between Japan and the United States during this time period?
I don't.
Can Okay, do you know what an internment camp is?
Yeah, I do.
Do you know what an internment camp is?
Yeah, it's when a group of people are taken to a camp and they're put there, like the Japanese were put in internment camps, I believe.
Oh yeah, that's where the Nazis slaughtered the Jews. No, that's concentration. Sorry, internment camp was where we put the Japanese into the camps. Yeah.
I know that it's where they would take not even POWs, but like innocent citizens and put them in a camp where they starved them and locked them up, I guess.
What type of citizens? Do you know?
I don't.
Japanese were put there, American Japanese, Japanese Americans, I mean, and it's not a nice place. They were treated very badly.
It was a shame what they did to the Japanese. But that was a decision they made. There were a lot more Germans around, but they picked on the Japanese. What they did, taking their property, and that was, of course, I didn't know this at the time.
Other than what I've seen on TV and what I've read and know about it, yeah, they're short of a concentration camp. You know, they weren't torturing these people, but they treated them pretty poorly, and they were sheltered, housed, fed, clothed, but everybody lost their businesses. You know, people were not eating like they should, and there was a lot of famine, and there were health issues everywhere. So, yeah, it was bad times for the Japanese.
Yes.
Okay, are you aware that internment camps were used in World War II for Japanese Americans?
Yes. In fact, my grandfather helped a Japanese family save their property by paying their taxes so that they wouldn't lose their property. It was a chicken or an egg ranch, and he helped them pay their taxes so that they wouldn't lose their property during that time.
Grandfather shortly after that divorced because of the fact, we were at war with Japan. But what he did, what was really cool, is he set them up, instead of putting them in a concentration camp like they did on the West Coast, he set them up over to Iowa. And they stayed with the family, and then he divorced them. But he at least took care of his wife and his kid before he said later to him. But he had to. It was just one of those things. He was in the army,
Yeah.
So, but he did set them up really in a good environment rather than them. They never had to go to a concentration camp.
Okay, do you have any idea, like, where any locations could have been at, of the internment camps anywhere in the U.S.?
I don't recall. I'm sure I've seen them in some historical documentary before, but I don't recall offhand.
I don't recall it. I know they had them in the Owens Valley and out in the desert. I don't remember where they all were. But I understand what happened and why they did it. It certainly wasn't right, but there was a lot of fear at the time.
Not really. I know that San Francisco, we had something near, I want to say the Presidio or something. There was a spot that I recall seeing something.
I think they were either in the eastern side of California or in Nevada.
Yeah, they were in the west, in Arizona, I believe, and New Mexico. It was a desert area. That much I remember.
California, like a lot of the West Coast, and then there was some on the East Coast, but a lot of the big ones were over here.
I actually know there was one in my hometown, Gilroy, California.
That there was 10 separate camps, I think, in different states.
Do you think there are any similarities or differences between the internment camp and concentration camps?
The fact that it was kind of prejudice towards a race type of people, but the only difference is that Germans were way more brutal about it.
I do know that the concentration camps were a lot more cruel and gruesome. People were killed there. The internment camps for the Japanese, it was still unjust, but it doesn't compare to the concentration camps that the Jewish people were put in.
So, you're picking out people just by their race. They're not necessarily they didn't do anything wrong.
So they weren't really mass internment camps.
I don't know for certain, but I think that the internment camps, they got a little better treatment. They were probably getting regular food, and possibly medical treatment if they needed it.
We didn't. I'm not justifying what happened. I understand why it happened. It was out of fear. But we didn't. They weren't enslaved, and we didn't mistreat them. Other than took their freedom away, because that's mistreatment.
Internment camps, they were not subject to hard labor and death the way the people that were in the concentration camps were.
Like, other than the fact that we're out in the middle of Owens Valley, not a good place to be. Where the Germans, the Jews, they used them as slaves, and they didn't feed them, and they put them in work camps, and when they couldn't work any longer, they'd kill them. But they were malnourished, so that's why they couldn't work after a while. So it was just hell on earth for them. It was horrible. So I don't think there's any comparison, other than the fact that they were both held against their will.
In the internment camp, they did have freedom to worship and to do what they want. I mean, they weren't under threat of death at every turn, like in the concentration camps. If you spoke out, they would shoot you and cut your head off.
Concentration camps were mainly for hardcore labor. There were a lot of bad things that happened in concentration camps. Where in internment camps, they were taken care of a little better. There was medical facilities. They were housed, fed, and clothed. But they weren't treated very well, and that's something that I guess that's the difference.
Do you know of any like mass deaths that they had in the Japanese internment camps or anything?
I don't know
Do
of
you
any.
think there were any?
I'm pretty sure there was, but I don't know of any. So
Probably was, but probably not due to just like sending them off to gas chambers or something like that.
Of course there were deaths, but nobody was killed like intentionally. Like
Some people did die. I mean, people tried to escape, they get shot, or there were some accidents as well, but it's not really like directly by the U.S.
Nature.
No, I haven't.
I never heard anything about that. I don't think so.
I never heard about it.
When you were in elementary school or maybe high school, did you ever have any like lesson on the Japanese internment camps or anything like that? Or like was it extensive or just like a paragraph?
It was rather superficial.
I recall that I graduated in 1984, and I honestly don't remember studying that.
I don't recall ever bringing that up.
Very briefly. I don't remember exactly when.
Not even a paragraph in your.
How did you hear about it?
It was a shameful thing that they didn't want to let too many people know about. I never heard of it. During the entire war, I never heard anything about it. I heard that they were removed and put under observation. That was it.
yeah, I was actually homeschooled for a good portion, and I learned about it.
Yeah, they teach us history class.
Like extensively, or just like a small paragraph in a textbook?
Extensively, if I remember correctly. It was probably like a couple of weeks.
Do you feel that internment camps were necessary?
for the Japanese, no. I think it was just war hysteria. Yeah.
I know everyone was paranoid, but I don't feel like it was necessary because a lot of them were American citizens, right?
Jewish internment camps probably got a little bit more publicity after the war, and then the Japanese internment camps were probably overlooked by most citizens.
Explain why or something?
Probably not.
It's just a form of racism.
It wasn't fair what they did by rounding them up and housing them and putting them in internment camps, but you have to think about it, 60-70 years ago, or actually 80 years ago now. It's been that long?
Yeah, it has.
It was just a different mindset. We were at war. We were at war.
What we do in this country, we do an injustice like this, and so we don't say much about it until they're all dead. And when they've all died, then we say, we were wrong, and now we're going to reimburse you for what we've done. But most of them are already dead, right?
At the time, the United States government believed it to be necessary and did what they thought was appropriate. Like I said, hindsight is 20/20. I think thing today, but at the time it seemed appropriate to at least those that were in power.
Oh yeah, I don't think there was any real reason for it, as far as actual spies or Japanese Americans were gonna go over to the enemy, the Japanese people that were bombing Pearl Harbor. I don't think the Japanese Americans were actually spies or was any threat. So probably wasn't really necessary.
However, at the time, the people who made the decision obviously thought that was the best way to go. And of course, we can always, in retrospect, find fault. The Monday morning quarterback, so to speak. But they did at the time what they thought was right. It's a shame. It's history. Unfortunately, we can't change it. It's something we'll have to remember to pass on to other generations. America does make mistakes. However, at the time, the people who made the decision obviously thought that was the best way to go. And of course, we can always, in retrospect, find fault. The Monday morning quarterback, so to speak. But they did at the time what they thought was right. It's a shame. It's history. Unfortunately, we can't change it. It's something we'll have to remember to pass on to other generations. America does make mistakes.